and then even having them come out. I mean, several months ago, I happened to be driving on Woodward and passed one of the vet clinics, and here this poor lady was racing around her car because when she had opened her car, the dog was doing laps around her car. Now we're talking, this is on Woodward, okay? Now if she had put a little bit of control on this dog, thank goodness the dog finally jumped back in the car so nothing bad happened, but there was that potential. So for me, just doing the simple obedience exercises is very important. Now, when I talk about dogs, and obviously for me, it's important that, when you do find your perfect dog, or you have the dog that you want, and you want to have a wonderful and great relationship, that's why to me, yes, it's important that you do train them and you do work with them. Because when you have that kind of a relationship, you're having a teamwork. I mean, if your dog is doing kind of whatever they want to do, in some ways we may say they're happy, and once again, I didn't mean a robot here, okay? But think about this, and I look at, where we're at right now in this economy, because we're not sure day to day, minute by minute, every Friday, is this the day going to be, okay? So we're nervous, we're anxious, we're worried. Whereas if your dog doesn't know minute by minute what's expected of them, then they start being nervous, then they start being anxious and cranky and maybe aggressive, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and then you have problems. Now, yes, I do work with behavioral problems and things like that, but once again, I'd rather tell you guys some secrets in order to do that, to prevent that, so that it never happens for you. Much as I like to work with your dogs, I also don't want to see the dogs end up, in rescue. I mean, thank goodness there's been quite a few dogs adopted today and animals adopted today, and that's wonderful and awesome. But let's keep the dogs that you do have, or the ones that you do adopt, in your home forever. So let's talk a little bit about, psychological control. I mean, we talked about the physical control. Obviously, sit, stay, down, come, making them walk on a leash is what? Your physical control. There's also important to have psychological control. Going back to, us, if there was no speed limit on streets, we'd be, of course, nervous what? There's no rules. I like the fact that if it says 40, well, people might be going 45, but they're not going 75. Because if you had somebody who was whipping in and out of traffic, you'd get very nervous. Okay, so the dogs need rules and regulations as well. Now, one of them I did mention, I kind of used it with the come command. If you give the command, the come command, you always follow through with that command. That's what the dog will always do. Now, but other things, if you make them sit, if you make them do this, it is very, very important whenever you give a command that you follow through with that command and don't repeat that command. I mean, if you were a boss, let's say, and you said, I need this job out tomorrow, and let's say the employee stayed there till, midnight, worked like crazy, got the job done, and then the boss never collected the job in the morning. The next time that boss said, I need that job out tomorrow, do you think that employee is going to do it? I wouldn't. That boss lost their credibility. Okay, so the boss lost its credibility. So as the owner, that's very, very important that whenever you give a command, it's not sit, 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 sit. It's just sit, and then follow through. Whether you manipulate them, you lure them, or you gently put them in the sit. It's important that when you give that command, you follow through. Let's talk about some of the other structures that makes the dog know that you're in charge. First of all, a lot of people do this sit, stay to go, for feeding. Okay, that once again, in their culture, who eats first? It's the alpha. Okay, so I do make them sit, I do make them stay, and then they can go ahead and eat. And another one is making sure that I always go through the door first. And I see this all the time. I mean, I got a program called Bonny's Boot Camp, and that's where the dog stays with me, and I do all the training, and I have 3 of my own. And occasionally I'll have one that just showed up for boot camp. In fact, this happened at Christmas time. The dog was a little cockapoo, which was kind of cute. She ran out the door, turned around and barked at all my dogs like, excuse me, but I control this area. Okay? So even if you have the kids do these structures, what they're doing is actually elevating their social status as well. And like it or not, I mean, dogs do consider kids as litter mates. There's certain things that you should do and let the kids do in order for them to that the dogs understand that the kids have to be respected as well. In fact, occasionally I will have a kids and canine class in order for, the dogs to respect the kids, because to me, a child and a dog's relationship is wonderful. I guarantee you, if my dad hadn't finally came home with that lab mix when I was a kid, I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. So to me, all this stuff that I'm talking about is very important. Like I said, I mean, training, if you have a dog, it's very important to socialize them, but also about getting the perfect dog, and that just has to look at your personality. You know, let's say if you're a type A personality. Well, you would think, well, that German Shorthair would be the perfect dog for you because it's hyper, you're hyper. Well, the problem is if you're a type A personality, you're trying to do 5 things at once, and all of a sudden you have this German Shorthair probably going, what do you want? Come on, let's go, let's go, let's go. I mean, you're like, no, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy. Okay, then that particular relationship wouldn't be a good one. Whereas once again, you know, it is important if you have the time and you have the personality to get the right dog. Now, I did talk about exercise because besides training, getting psychological control, exercise is another key. Even with my own dogs, it's been raining for 4 or 5 days and they haven't gotten their exercise, they're starting to drive me nuts. And once again, let's look at the different type of dogs. You know, and one of my breeds is also Irish Wolfhounds. I mean, they're very lethargic, laid back. You know, they get a half-hour exercise twice a day. They're cool, they're fine. That German Shorthair, once again, would need an hour and a half of exercise. We did talk about, you know, some of the ways, obviously jogging. I mean, there's some wonderful dog walkers out there that would be able to take your dogs for a walk. If you don't have time to exercise, you know, there's also daycare that you can go ahead and put your dog into in order for them to get some of that exercise out. But it's very, very, very important. Now, if you do have children and you are looking at dogs, I mean, you know, make sure that it's going to be a good fit. Little kids, I mean, you know, very nervous type dog might not be the best fit for them. And yet, if you have older kids, well, with older kids, they're not going to necessarily want a very laid back and lethargic dog. I mean, they're going to get bored. And then the problem is if I have that, you know, super hyper dog too, and I don't train them, I don't, work with them, things like that, they get bored as well. And then, of course, we have the chewing, the digging, and things like that. And if you do have a puppy, and because I don't know if people have the puppies, you know, I've seen a few of the older dogs here, but if you do have a puppy, you know, the best suggestion that I can give you is no matter what you do, that you always supervise that puppy. I mean, the stories that I could tell you and the damage that I have seen because of puppies, okay, I mean, it's actually hilarious. In fact, the picture on my laptop computer, there's so many holes in this person's backyard that even the doghouse is falling in a hole. Now, the dogs are 2 years old and they say, fix it. Now, trust me, I've got a lot of tools in my arsenal of things to do, but if they had supervised it right off the bat, then what? That would have happened. Even housebreaking, I mean, housebreaking isn't rocket science. You know, as long as you're diligent, stay on top of them, you know, they're not going to soil in your house and they'll learn to do it outside. Once again, if you do have, you know, any behavioral issues, by all means, you know, ask them. I mean, maybe there's some piece of the puzzle, you've tried this, you've tried that, you've tried that, and maybe it hasn't worked, okay? Because for me, I mean, if there's something that's making it that your relationship isn't great with your dog, there's that piece that's missing, I'd rather try to help you solve it. I mean, dogs, let's face it, they're very thinking creatures. We don't think, you know, I mean, they have great intelligence. All you got to do is watch a leader dog lead a blind person around. I mean, who's the one that's deciding to stop? I mean, yes, they're the ones who are saying right or left or things like that, but if the dog didn't learn right or left, or oh my goodness, there's a curb, there's a car, things like that. One of the trainers that works for me is a certified service dog trainer. The things that she trains their dogs to do is amazing. You know, and it's once again, I mean, you watch the rock and roll canines over there. I mean, the immense work that they do with their dogs in order to work with them, I mean, it's a great show to see. And once again, I will be at the booth inside there, so if you do want to see me after this, by all means, come by. The name of my company is Alternative Canine Training, and now I figured I would take some questions from the audience.